Howdy, I'm known as Dimwit, the last mountain man, feared throughout the land. And I have a model 1867 Trapdoor carbine in 55 caliber. Let's fire it and then we'll have a closer look at it and I'll tell you all about it. It's actually 28 gauge shotgun, but it's loaded with a 55 caliber roundball. Okay, so now you have to bring it to full cock and open it. And so, I'll let you have a closer look. Well, that's hammered down, and then there's a half cock. Model 1867 Trapdoor carbine, 55 caliber smooth bore. Now, by now you have probably guessed that this carbine was never at the Little Bighorn battle. So what is this? Well, it used to be an infantry rifle from Belgium. And it started out as a model 1853 percussion muzzle-loading rifle. And then they decided to make him into cartridge guns in 1867. And so then now it's called model 1853/67 and Albini-Braendlin, something like that. An Italian guy and an English guy in Belgium created this. And it's quite an interesting story. I won't get into it in detail, but several different countries use these, and so. But it's not an infantry rifle anymore, is it? Some time after it was converted to a cartridge rifle, it was sold as military surplus. And it was changed into a 28 gauge shotgun. And 28 gauge is 55 caliber and 14 millimeters. And so they got rid of the rear sight that was on here, and they cut down the barrel band. I think they switched to they moved this band was further, it was kind of the middle band, they moved that back, I think, but when I got the hold of it, I thought it kind of looked a little sad. It had this awful long, thin, naked barrel and ugliest front sight you can imagine. And I figured it would make a much nicer carbine. So I shortened barrel, and it's actually got Waffenamt stamped front sight from a German World War II Mauser, I think. Something I had laying around. So and now a 28 gauge shotgun isn't much of a shotgun, but when you load it with roundball, it's an entirely different animal. Yeah, it's quite a big chunk of lead there. It's about 250 grains, and you get this traveling around 1,200 feet per second without too much effort, and so that's 10% more weight than a 45 ACP pistol round at 50% higher velocity. So don't want to get in its way. And so let's see. Let's shoot it once more, and then I'll show you how to reload these cartridges and a few other things. We gotta bring it to full cock to open the action. So here's our ready-made cartridge. And then you can bring it down to half cock if you're not going to shoot it right away, and that will also keep the action from opening up by accident. So let's see if you can hit anything. Well, I hit my gong, but I didn't hear me hit it. It was so loud. So there you go. Now, let me show you how I load these rounds myself. Okay, so here's empty brass casing, but it is primed. And I have just a flat piece of steel here, and with a hole in it. And see those little dots there, kind of creates a circle that shows me I put that cartridge in there within those little dots. It's centered right over that hole. And then I got this old nail I filed down the end. It fits down in there, and so you put this on your table, and you knock it with a hammer, and you knock that primer out of there. And then when you're going to put a new primer in there, you just place the primer on this part here without the hole, and you put the empty casing on top of it. And I have this wooden dowel that's made to fit exactly down into them cases. I put this in there, and I'll hit this with a hammer a little bit to seat that primer. And then I pour powder down in there, and then I seat 4 of these cards on top of the powder, and I use the other end of that dowel just to push them down in there. Now, I like to use 4 of them on top of the powder, and then I drop the bullet down in there. It's been dipped into melted bullet lube, and this is my first time with a new recipe for bullet lube, and I'll tell you about that. So drop that in there, and then I push another card on top of this. Now if you check out my video list, there's a part 1 and a part 2 where I show you how I do this at home. And when I do it at home, I pour melted bullet lube down on top of a bare roundball, and when that solidifies, it keeps the bullet in there, so there's no need for a card on top. But today was my first time with this gun, so I wanted to start kind of gently. So I started out with 45 grains of Swiss powder 1.5 FG, and I ended up at 65 grains, and that's I usually try to work my load up to where it starts to act like a gun and not a toy, and black powder starts to act violent instead of gentle, if the gun is up to it. And so 65 grains seemed to be a sensible load for this gun. Today is my first time that I used Swiss powder, and I'm switching to that for most of my guns because it's more efficient, so you can use less of it. It also burns cleaner. So and when you also use less of it, it burns even cleaner. So, and if you've been doing any black powder shooting, you know this black powder residue can be kind of a pain. And I fired 7 rounds with this gun today, and it stays remarkably clean. So but remember to reduce your amount of powder compared to other powders. Start out with like 80% of what you're used to, and then when you're done shooting them, what we used to do is we drop them in a jar with dishwashing liquid in them. Not anymore. Come a long way since then. Vanish, oxy action. Put some of this powder down in that water, much better. And what else should I show you? Well, to knock out these little cards, I knocked them out from milk cartons. It's got kind of a nice waxed cardboard. And I got these things, wad cutters, in all kinds of different sizes, and you can get them off of eBay pretty cheap. So it's easy to do. It's fun. And these are the shells that I'm using, Magtech 28 gauge. So yeah, the bullet lube. I've been using a mixture with beeswax and some olive oil in it, but I haven't been really satisfied with it. It kind of dries up, and it's almost as much trouble to get out of the gun as the black powder residue sometimes, and we had to use really hot water. But for the black powder residue itself, cold water, it will work just fine. But when you use warm water, it will help water to evaporate when you're done, so that way you can be sure that the gun is dry when you're done. Of course, put some oil on it. But now I'm still using beeswax 50%, but I'm using 40% coconut fat, and you can use Crisco instead if that's easy for you. And then I add 5% olive oil or canola oil, and I add 5% lanolin fat. It's the kind of fat that you have in your skin and in your hair. It's not the kind of lanolin that that they call fluid film that they spray underneath the car to stop it from rusting. It's the kind of stuff you can get at a pharmacy, very expensive small jars, and women make different sorts of creams for sore nipples and everything like that, and you can put some of that in there, but I think that's kind of optional. You'll get by just fine with beeswax and coconut fat or Crisco, and then some olive oil or canola oil. And I'll put this recipe down below in the description. I'll also put it on there in Norwegian, because we got some different names for these things. So yeah, I guess that about covers. Let's shoot it one more time. This is fun. Okay. Thanks for watching. See you some other time.